I think that there's, when you get into the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, which he helped forge, there's a lot of problems with that that undermine victims. And he also brought aboard Stan Pottinger. And Stan Pottinger was in the government in the 60s and 70s. He was an assistant attorney general. And if you needed a cover-up, Stan Pottinger was the man. Wherever there's malfeasance in the 60s and the 70s, Stan Pottinger is there. I call him the Forrest Gump of cover-ups. He is truly the Forrest Gump of cover-ups.
What are some of the ones that you saw him at?
His first major cover-up was Kent State. Kent State there were National Guard soldiers that shot 4 students. And Stan Pottinger was going to get to the bottom of it. And he impaneled a grand jury that looked at whether or not there was a conspiracy there, whether or not these soldiers were told to kill the college students or shoot at the college students. And that grand jury just happened to declare that there was no evidence that there was a conspiracy whatsoever. But now this is interesting. The New York Times reported this in 2007. There was a tape that Stan Pottinger had for that grand jury that has one of the commanders telling the soldiers to shoot, to aim, fire, and shoot.
Yeah.
And okay, so what happened there was that tape was given to some acoustics laboratory in Boston to analyze, and the acoustics laboratory said that there wasn't any sounds of any National Guard commanders giving orders. So it was a perfect plausible deniability.
Yeah.
I mean, the government certainly has enough acoustic scientists to look at a tape like that or to discern a tape like that. But he gave it to this firm in Boston, so he had plausible deniability. So he covered up that conspiracy that involved the murder of 4 college students and the maiming of a number of other ones.
What happened to the soldiers who shot the college students?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing happened to those soldiers.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny you gave it to an acoustics firm in Boston because I would think they would only be able to recognize the sounds of somebody yelling at their wife.
Yeah, it's so that was Stan's first cover-up, Kent State, and but he was just getting going. I mean, he's like I said, he's the Forrest Gump of cover-ups.
What else did he get into?
Well, there was this nasty little program that the FBI invented. It was called COINTELPRO. And COINTELPRO circumvented just about every constitutional right of Americans. And it was exposed in the mid-'70s. There was the church hearings that was looking into government malfeasance. And it exposed COINTELPRO. And COINTELPRO was legal harassment, intimidation, wiretapping, infiltration, smear campaigns, blackmail, and the suborning of perjury, and countless jail sentences, and most likely in the case of Black Panther Fred Hampton, murder. And there's other murders that are connected to COINTELPRO.
Yeah.
And
So,
there's a lot about the program that we still don't know a lot about.
And I kind of think that it is still probably going on now.
In some form,
I mean, they officially ended it, but like they learn from the tactics and they incorporate the tactics into other programs. You mentioned murder. I think one thing that really needs to be stressed about COINTELPRO is that, and this is actually how the government works in a lot of intelligence stuff, is they themselves, like, they're not going to send, like, FBI hit squad number 7 to, like, your house to shoot you. It's a lot more effective to send letters to maybe groups that you don't get along with so much. I mean, this happened in I think it was San Diego or L.A. With the Black Panthers and this other group, United Slaves, where they essentially like sent these poison pen letters to each other to try to get them to fight each other, which worked actually and resulted in
carnage.
In carnage, yeah, in a shootout, at least one shootout. But this was a pretty favored tactic among not just radical groups, but mostly radical groups, but just really any group that the government was not a fan of.
COINTELPRO went after the Black Panthers really hard and went after the American Indian movement really hard. Those were the two primary groups that it had the most antipathy for. And there was some COINTEL agents that planted a rumor that an AIM member was an informant, and she was not an informant. Her name was Anne Marie Aquash, I think. She was a Micmac from the Micmac tribe, and she was murdered by some people in AIM. And that's a direct result of COINTELPRO poisoning her relationship.
That was a huge tactic of COINTELPRO is like Fed jacketing, basically like trying to convince if there's like a person in your group to try to convince everybody else that they were a Fed or an agent themselves, with the implication that they would maybe get murdered there. And that did happen. That happened within the Black Panthers several times. Happened with AIM, other groups as well.
Yes, and COINTELPRO, they called up Martin Luther King's wife and said that he was having an affair.
Yeah.
And they also sent a letter to, I think it was William Sullivan, who was very high in the FBI, sent a letter to Martin Luther King saying that they had recordings of him and that he had to kill himself by the time he accepted the Nobel Prize for Peace. So that was COINTELPRO. And Stan Pottinger just happened to investigate COINTELPRO. And he got to the bottom of COINTELPRO, and he sent a memo, December 1974 memo, to the Attorney General, William Saxby. And he said the Civil Rights Division found no basis for seeking criminal charges against particular individuals involving particular incidents with COINTELPRO. So Stan Pottinger again covered up COINTELPRO. No one in the government was arrested for COINTELPRO after Stan Pottinger's investigation. And Stan said that there wasn't enough evidence. When the Church Commission or the church hearings had 20,000 pages of documents, and they interviewed scores of FBI agents and scores of COINTEL targets. So there was plenty of evidence, and he covered it up. He covered up COINTELPRO. No one went. Of all that carnage that was sown by COINTELPRO, no one went to prison in the government for COINTELPRO.
A lot of other people went to prison.
Yes, but no one in the government. The targets of COINTELPRO went into prison, but no one in the government.
So you think Stan was, he was always being kind of called up to be the guy that produces the official document that can be used to kind of like cover up, clean up, kind of settle everything so, all the official bureaucracy can move on.
He's the guy, and in various articles I've read about him, he's the guy that says, I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
Yes. The white hat.
The white hat.
Fake white hat.
And actually, there's a New York Times article that has his picture, and then above his picture in capital letters is Civil Rights Protector. It's quite a picture.
Yeah. Does he pop up anywhere else?
Oh, he pops up all over. There was an interesting case where CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the break-in into the business of a former CIA agent, and they got outed, and the case was given to Stanley Pottinger. And Stanley Pottinger found that there was no malfeasance, that the CIA can break into Americans' businesses, and there's no criminal violations there.
Wait, no one even got charged with B&E?
No one got charged with anything.
I gotta join the CIA. You
I
just
gotta
break
get
into
Stan's
people's
number.
stuff. Yeah, what are you talking about?
But okay, so he said, now this is the New York Times, so it's got to be true. He said to the New York Times, he said, well, you know, I didn't get Dick Helms washed from this, but he's still liable for his testimony before the Church Commission. Now, Dick Helms told the Church Commission that our government and the CIA never helped any opponents of Salvador Allende of Chile. And as it turns out, the CIA gave $8 million to opponents of Allende. And actually, we expedited Allende's death and put in Pinochet, who wasn't really well liked by a lot of Chileans. He had this. He was a little on Pinochet was a little on the genocidal side.
He had a nasty habit of electrocuting people's balls and shooting them. Yeah, that's an interesting statement from Helms because I mean it's been I think pretty conclusively proven that we certainly helped Pinochet gain power, but also helped organize chaos in the economy in Chile to facilitate that transfer of power. I mean, we organized strikes, placed articles in newspapers, and stirred people up against Allende.
And we also murdered a general. The CIA murdered a general that was going to back Allende, and we couldn't have that.
Yeah. Was that him? The 22 in Italy? No.
And then there was there was like a soccer arena that was filled with people.
Yeah.
That were murdered. There was actually a movie made about that with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but their kid had been one of the people that had been murdered in that arena.